Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Vibrant Life podcast. This is the official podcast of the Vibrant Life community. And I'm Sarah Nolan. I'm an energetic management advisor and a burnout prevention consultant. And with my unique process, Recharge, I help my clients to reconnect, reprogram, and re-energize so that they go from stress and in pain to vibrant energy and joy. And today, I have the amazing Faith Young. She's one of my favorite people here in Denver. She was born and raised in the suburbs of Denver, Colorado, and her life-changing experiences have been giving her the ability to inspire, guide, and empower others through theirs. And she's a dynamic speaker, a trainer, an author, and a lifter of souls. And she's one of the top award-winning realtors in the nation, and she served on the board of the South Metro Board of Realtors Young Professional Network in Denver, in Colorado. And she lives with her super sweet, super cute puppy, Chihuahua named Boo Boo. So welcome, Faith. It's so good to have you here.
Thank you. I'm so honored, Sarah. I love that you are creating this community with what you're doing, and you're exactly right. One of your gifts is you have the great power of asking questions, and I believe questions can create space. And so I just love what you're doing in this community, and you're bringing everybody together to bring value to each other's lives. And I just want to thank you for including me in this podcast today. I'm super honored and excited.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so happy to have you. And I just want to tell you, you look so good today. Like you just look filled with energy, and you just look really bright. And it's been a little while since I've seen you, so I just wanted to
let
you know that.
I literally posted the other day. I just got my Bronco hair done, and I was at the pool, and I took this great shot of myself in the sun, and there's like this sun glare on my sunglasses, and I wrote, it's amazing what happens when you see yourself in a different light. Other people see you in that same light.
Yeah. I love that picture, and I love that message.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing it, for sure.
Yeah. So first of all, tell us, so you're a realtor, you're like top in the nation realtor, and you're an author of your book, What Would Faith Do? Which I have, and I know a lot of my friends have. I mean, pretty much everybody in Colorado has the book, and around the world, I'm sure. So how did you get into all of this, and how does the book relate to real estate?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. Yes. So this is my journal, and here's a copy of my What Would Faith Do book, and people can get them on Amazon in case your audience is asking.
Yeah.
And so I wrote my first book in 2013, and before I wrote it, I had hired a life coach, and I had a workshop recently. It was called my Level Up Workshop, and one of the gals who's at my workshop said, "Well, Faith, do you have a coach?" I'm like, "Yes, matter of fact, I do. I coach with my managing broker twice a week." And so it was cool because she was kind of testing to see where I'm at. And I'm like, heck yeah, I believe if you want to achieve more in your life, then surround yourself with people who are doing or being where you want to go.
Yeah.
Right. So I had hired this life coach, paid him $5,000 to be my coach. And through the process, he's like, "Oh my gosh, Faith, you put things in such simple terms that people can understand it. During this process of me coaching you, you've changed my life." And these were his words. And I was like, "Wait, I paid you and I changed your life." He goes, "Because you're so good at putting things into such simple terms, you should write a book." And so I did. So that is where my book came from initially. And believe me, I always say if it was easy, everyone would do it. Right. And so writing a book nowadays, because of Amazon, it's way more simpler than it was before. But to be honest, people dream about it their whole lives, but don't actually fulfill it. And so this is something that I said I was going to do. And I'm a person like that. If I set myself out to go do something, I complete it.
Yeah.
And I'm a person of my word. Like, I really don't say I'm going to do something unless I'm committed. And so it took 8 weeks to write and 9 months to edit, which was the perfect birthing process. And the reason why it took so long to edit is because on the second version of editing, and I thought it would only take 2, but it ended up taking 3 editing versions, is because by the second version, I realized that my stories were so matter-of-factly. And you know what I mean by that? Like, I had healed so much that the pain was taken out of the stories. And so at that second edit, I went back and added all the details and created this space for people to feel my pain from these real life stories that I experienced. And what the coolest thing was, what I experienced from creating that book and adding the awareness that I discovered by adding that pain, is that not all human beings can relate to love, abundance, and joy.
Right.
But they can all relate to pain.
Yes.
Right? We can all relate to pain. Matter of fact, we experience pain straight from the birth canal, right? Literally, we bring ourselves into this world in a physical pain. And so what I discovered through that is, I'm so glad that I went back and added the pain, because that's where people could relate. So whether they had experienced something similar, or their mother experienced something similar, or their daughter or their sister, it helped them to relate, and then they could take the tools and implement them immediately. And so that's my intention. Is I believe the best way you can teach anyone anything is lead by example. And I've created this beautiful, abundant, joyful life. And so my intention is to show everybody else that's the life we were meant to have, and that we can create that life. We just have to take the action. You got to believe it's possible, and then get rid of all the stuff that no longer serves you, that's holding you back from creating that dream life you've always wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love the way that you put that. And it's what's really interesting about the pain and what you're talking about, like dreaming, creating that dream life, and you know, transferring your dreams into reality and creating these beautiful, joyful lives. But then coming back to the pain is, you know, a lot of people will look at that and say, well, what about like positive thinking? And like, if you focus too much on that pain and you read about it and you allow like your imagination to go there, isn't that going to help you to manifest negativity? And I know the answer, but I would love for you to like share about that a little bit. And I think it's awesome.
So yeah, I love that question, because it's a question that most people aren't really willing to hear the answer or willing to even ask, right?
Yeah.
But the truth is that everything is energy, and pain is energy, right? If stress or uncomfortableness is energy, and we get to choose what we do with it. Right? So if you go back into that pain, or what created the pain, or that uncomfortableness, and actually allow yourself to experience it, you can actually come out on a higher vibration, because you embraced it instead of, you know, pushed it away or ran away from it. And when you allow that, all this, because everything is energy, and even though it might be a negative situation, that if you truly believe that we're infinite beings, which I do, that everything is a part of our divine path, and that even the uncomfortableness actually can create space for something even bigger than you can imagine. But you are so worried about this uncomfortableness that you were afraid to even realize that this is about a bigger picture. And so that's how I like to describe pain. Is the other thing about pain is it shows that we're human. Right? That we're in our physical body, and that we are spiritual beings living in a human being body, human body, right? And so many people, so much of my life I spent checked out of my body, that I wasn't feeling pain, physical pain. Right. Once I re-entered my life, my body, about 10 years ago, that's when I got to experience things on a higher level, because I was fully present in the moment.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And what comes up for me with that is like feeling it to heal it. And so many people just want to run from their pain, but then it's still there. And then it gives even more power to the pain, you know, because it wants to birth from you, you know. So anyway, I love that you did that. And when I read the book, one of my biggest takeaways was like, I love how you talked about your stories and how you always talked about it from an empowered space and not like a victim space at all. You know, I love how you always had this commentary about how, like, this is your perspective now, and you can see, you know, how it was serving you in some way. So
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate that. And not just like anything in life, everything is a perception, right?
mm-hmm.
And how you perceive it. And what I realized when I went to launch my book is that people who are very close to me were still victims, and it
mm-hmm.
triggered them left and right.
Yeah.
And because I had healed from it, I was brought back into that pain because they were in so much pain, and were still victims, right? But I truly believe that when you take ownership, that was one of the most powerful things I've ever done in my life, is took ownership
mm-hmm.
and eliminated blame. It was one of the most amazing things I did. I discovered that when I was 21 years old, and I talk about the story in my book on how we choose our path from the gate. And that's when I discovered at 21 that I chose my parents. And so all those people out there who have mommy issues and daddy issues, they don't like to hear that story. But the truth is, if everything is divine and we have a choice on our destiny, and I believe we do straight from the gate, that what if we chose those people to be our pain, to remind us of our purpose on this earth?
Right. Right. And help us to grow into that, you know?
Yeah.
It's amazing how those traumas can give us the exact tools that we need to do the things that we're here to do.
Exactly. Because when you go back and, you know, I wrote this letter to myself when I was a little kid, and in the letter, I talk about the things that I won't do when I grow up and the things I will
mm-hmm.
do to my children when I grow up. What I discovered by that is us human beings, we actually focus on what we don't want.
Yeah.
It's actually a protective mechanism to help us survive, right? And our ego's job is to help us survive. And believe me, I'm not saying toss out your ego, because in
mm-hmm.
a dark alley, we need our ego.
Right.
Right? But our ego's job is not to help us thrive. And so we naturally will think about things that we don't want as a protective mechanism.
mm-hmm.
And so in my life, as early as 18, when I shifted my life, the course of my life, is I had to retrain my brain to focus on what I do want instead of what I don't.
And you were 18 when you did that?
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible.
Thank you. Yes. The story was when I was 18, I was in a very negative place. I came from a very abusive, negative family environment.
mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, as little as 1 week before my car accident, if I end up in the ERs, who's going to care, let alone show up? And sure enough, a week later, I roll my Bronco 3.5 times.
Wow.
And it's in the middle of winter. The Bronco stops, and I'm on my side. The windshield is completely blown out. I go to climb out, and the passenger shrunk down to 4 inches. So I had to climb myself out of the back, because guess what? Nobody was coming. Finally go to the middle of the street, and I'm waving people down. 3 cars drove by without stopping.
Oh my gosh.
And it was so frightening, because I could have had someone else in the car bleeding or dying.
Right.
And finally, the 4th person, who was pregnant, she stopped. She didn't have a cell phone. My cell phone was underneath my Bronco. And so I couldn't call for help. And the sheriff of the fire department shows up, and he's like, wait, you came out of that metal? He's like, is there someone else inside dead? That's how horrific this accident was. Sure enough, I find myself on the way to the ER, just like I had predicted a week ago, that said, hey, if I end up in the ER, who's going to care, or let alone show up? Sure enough, I find myself on the way to the ER, and I say to myself, wait a minute, if that much negativity could create this much pain, imagine what that much positive energy could create in my life. And I literally changed my life. And I changed my focus and started focusing on the positive instead of the negative.
You know what's blowing my mind right now, Faith? We have talked many times and told stories like this. And I just made a really interesting connection that just shows how miraculous our friendship is.
Tell me.
Because one, I didn't write a letter, but I had a similar conversation with myself when I was a kid that was like, this is what I'm going to do for my kids. And this is what I'm going to be like when I'm an adult. And I had like, when you're telling, I'm like, I did the same thing. And then I also had
Wow.
like some serious negativity when I was a teenager, a little bit younger than 18. But I actually attempted suicide. And that was like a turning point for me. And it was like I created all of this with so much negativity. And it took me a few years to get to the positive side, but I had a few more wake up calls. And then it was the same realization. It was like, I wonder how much, like, I went that far into the darkness. I wonder how far into the light I can go. It was like the same exact, it was like different timing and stuff, but I'm like, I've never heard of anybody sharing it in that way. And it's just so cool that here we are today with like such similar experiences.
I love it. It's synchronicity. It shows, light attracts light. And for all the viewers that are watching this, may they have similar stories, or may they be in the darkness and they decide to choose to move to the light and be more positive. Because if it can impact our lives, how much it has, it can impact anybody's lives. And truly, what we're saying is that we made a choice, that we both made a choice.
Exactly. It was a very conscious choice.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how it's like some people think like, oh, she's special, he's special, they're all special. There's nothing special. I mean, we're all special, but there's like nothing really different about you or about me. It's just like, we just made that choice. And sometimes you have, special people like in the right time, who help, things along. But it's really like there's a certain point of bravery that kicks in, right? And then you make that choice. But I think this is going to be a sign for everybody who's watching, who may be on that crossroads of like, which way are you going to go? And like, now's the time to maybe make a new choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, we always have a choice on how we show up. There's so many things that we cannot control, like the weather. I like to pretend I control the weather. It's always sunny in my world. But ultimately, if there was enough energy, we could probably shift it if enough humans focused on it. But the truth is how you respond to the weather.
Right, yeah.
Right? On a snowy day in Colorado, what do? You get up earlier to scrape off the car, to shovel the driveway, right? That is how you can show up. Right? You can't control the snow if it's going to snow or not, but you definitely can choose how you show up in it. And that's a powerful message. And so all the people who have been struggling, or anyone who's watching this, or if anyone in your particular life who is struggling, remind them to focus on what they do want, instead of what they don't want. Because that letter, when I wrote it to myself, the side that said the things that I will not do to my children when I grow up was 15 things long. The things that I will do for my children when I grow up were 3 things written.
Wow.
3 things. And that was it. And so that's what I discovered is, for one, our imagination is limiting. I didn't know what it was to have a happy, loving, positive, healthy environment as a child. But I really knew what I didn't want, right? And so that's why I believe if we focus on what we do want, we'll get more of that naturally, because that's what we're focused on. And we have a tendency to focus on, as human beings, what we don't want. And if we're just aware of that, we can shift it. And it took, like you said, several things to get you out of that funk that you were in. And I think anyone can relate to that. Anyone, suicide affects so many people. They've either experienced themselves, or someone in their life has attempted or took their life. And that's a prime example of being in a dark place, and you need someone to help you pull yourself out of it. Yeah. And sometimes it's just a matter of asking for help. And that's about receiving. And that's one thing that I really focus on. I have an entire book in my chapter about receiving. And the last 6 months of my life, I've been able to receive even on a higher level. And it's been absolutely magical to be able to see it, because I've been teaching people how to manifest and how to receive for a decade now.
Yeah.
And then for myself to even step it up a notch has been such a magical experience, because when you allow yourself to ask for help or to receive help when people offer, the universe is like, oh wait, she's ready, let's give her more, and let's have flowers delivered at her front door, and let's have someone bring her pizza at the pool, and all this cool stuff that, if you're not ready to receive, might not show up because you're blocking it.
Right, exactly. So what kinds of things have you been receiving where it's like a level up? I'm very curious now.
Yeah, it is. It's super exciting. So like, for example, a couple months ago, my mom asked me to drive her to the hospital. So I take her to the hospital, and my assistant's with me, and his mom personally passed away about a year ago. And I was like, hey, you don't have to go in the hospital if you don't want. You can just hang out here for a minute while I go in and take my mom to check her into the hospital. And while he's out in the Escalade, he notices that the Escalade's out of gas. And he goes to the gas station and puts gas in it. And I come out from the ER, and we're headed back to the office, and I have 3 more appointments. And I'm like, oh yeah, we're headed to the office. I'm like, I got to stop to get gas. He goes, oh, I noticed you were out. I already put it in there.
That's
like
awesome.
money out of his own wallet into my Escalade.
Yeah.
And I literally was like, in my head, I'm like, when was the last time anyone put gas into my Escalade, right? I'm thinking this, right? And so, long story short.
And this was your assistant, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. How often does like somebody's assistant like give them, something like that?
It's so cool, because long story short, I had 3 more appointments. So after I came to the office, I headed to my 3 more appointments, and at 9 o'clock at night, I went back to check on my mom. I get home at 10 o'clock at night, and guess what pops on my Escalade? The low fuel light. And right then I was like, wait a minute. If he hadn't taken a minute because he wanted to, not because he had to, and definitely not because I asked him, I didn't even think to ask him to put gas in my Escalade. He noticed it and just did it. And I said to myself, if he hadn't done that somewhere throughout my day, I would have had to stop to get gas. Right. And I wouldn't have been able to be there fully for everybody else that day who needed me. And so because I allowed myself to receive this beautiful gift, I was actually able to be there for people even more fully in a better way, because I could be more present instead of stopping to get gas, because it takes 10-15 minutes to get gas. So it's not like you can take that time back. And so I could be there for everybody else because someone was there for me.
You know what I love about that story is it just shows that it doesn't serve you or anybody else if you're in like a suffering state. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people feel like they have to sacrifice themselves in order to have something else. I was just talking with somebody who was experiencing a lot of pain and just a lot of suffering. And it was like, oh, this isn't the price that I pay. And I was like, wow, it's like, imagine how much, because this person was really coming from a place of service and serving like for the, greater good and like bigger than herself. And it just kind of broke my heart a little bit, because it's like, think, if your whole purpose is about service, think about if you weren't suffering so much, how much more you could give, and that's what really lit her heart up. So I love that. What a simple, but like such a profound example of that, how it's like you allowed yourself to receive in a really big way. And because of that, you were more energized to serve.
Without a doubt. It reminds me of my story when 2 years ago I was in a car accident, and about 90 days later I had this incredible headache. And I go to the ER, and the doctor's like, you're having a migraine. I said, oh honey, I've been in 15 car accidents.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And so for all the listeners out there, what I believe is car accidents are to tell you you're off track.
Yes.
So I asked the universe to give me much smaller signs now. So I go in and she's like, you're having a migraine. I'm like, look, honey, when I said this was a 9 or a 10, maybe I should have said this was a 20. I'm like, I am not having a migraine. I'm like, you need to scan my brain. I was very, very persistent, and she did a CAT scan, and she came back and she goes, Faith, you have 2 blood clots in your brain. I said, okay. She's like, it's really serious. I'm like thinking, you think? Why else am I in the ER? Because of a migraine?
Yeah.
Right? I was like, and the nurse comes in, congratulations, you earned yourself a trip to the ICU.
Oh, geez.
So a couple weeks after that, I had called one of my intuitive readers and said, okay, because I had this like enlightenment, the spiritual enlightenment, and my body, I felt like, was trying to catch up. And, you know, and so I called my intuitive reader, and she goes, Faith, and this will relate to your story with your friend you were just talking to, and many people who are listening. The message is, you no longer need to suffer to fulfill your purpose on this earth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
So powerful.
It's so powerful. And it's like, you know what? I have story after story of pain in my life. And the coolest thing about these stories of pain is that's how we can help people heal from theirs.
Yeah.
If I had never experienced pain of a divorce, for example, and if someone's going through divorce, they can't help someone through divorce. They haven't even accomplished it themselves.
Right.
Right. But I was divorced 10 years ago, and I had a divorce party, and my mom goes to me at the divorce party, well, Faith, I knew you would do just fine. You're a survivor. And I said, Mom, you know what? That's just the thing. I am done surviving. I'm thriving.
Yes.
Right. And so can I help someone heal from a divorce? 100%, because I have done it. I've gone through the pain and gone through all the darkness to see the brightness, and now on the other side, celebrating life. And so that's one thing about our pain, is it is a gift handed to you to help others heal from theirs.
Right. Exactly. So powerful. And for them to see what's possible on the other side of that.
Exactly. Like that imagination, right? Like,
yeah.
If they can't see anyone else doing it, how can they picture themselves?
Yeah. Yeah. And so you've mentioned a little bit about your healing journey, but I'm curious to know a little bit more details on that. Like, you said the car accident, was that when you were 18?
That was one of my first accidents.
Okay.
But the one that I had recently was 2 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
2 years ago, when I had my blood clots in my brain. And when I was in ICU, I had the courage to post on Facebook, because it's very vulnerable to post when you.
I remember where I was when he posted that.
That's
I remember
powerful.
I was in my camper. We had just started full-time RVing, and I was in New Hampshire, and I remember I was like laying on the bed, and I like opened Facebook, and I was like, you had this post, and I have a natural energetic connection with people who need physical healing. And so I just had this like kind of full body energy boost that like led me to that post. And then, I did like prayers and sent energy and stuff like that. And it's funny, like I remember the whole thing like it was yesterday.
I love that. Those prayer, and that's when it's something important, is when you remember it, right? And those prayers were answered. And so it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage for me to say, hey, I'm in ICU. I have 2 blood clots in my brain. Send me love and positive energy. Because people actually assumed that I had a stroke. Because most people who have blood clots, it's because they discover it after they've had a stroke. Right. And I actually prevented myself from having a stroke because I listened to my body. Yeah. And when I was in the ER, I had just posted, I'm in the ER, send love. And one of my girlfriends, Leslie, she was like 10 minutes from the hospital, and she comes to the hospital immediately. And she thinks I have a staph infection. And at the time I had a staph infection, and she thinks that's why I'm in the hospital. And she comes in and she's like, what's going on? Right? She tells him she's my sister so she can get into ICU. And she's like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And I said, I have 2 blood clots in my brain. The first one starts here at at the frontal lobe and goes to the center of my skull. And there's about a centimeter gap, and the second one starts and goes to the back of my skull. And she goes white as a ghost. And she goes, Faith, can I pray for you? And I said, yes. And she grabs my hand, and she grabs my mom's hand, because my mom was there with me. This is about 7 or 8 in the morning. And she prays for me. And my mom has this tear fall out of her eye. And for one, because here I am, her strong, positive daughter, literally in this life or death situation.
Right, yeah.
And how magical that moment was is because when I was 18, if someone said, could I pray for you? I would have said, hell no.
Yeah.
I literally would have rejected it and been like, no way. So to have a 180 change my life, and to be able to not only have the courage to post, hey, I can need some love and light right now, but then to fully embrace all that love and healing energy, that's when it impacts your life. You can pray for people all day long, but if they're not receptive, those prayers will not be answered. And it was so powerful, because through the 3 things that really healed me from those blood clots, because 2 weeks later, they were 75% dissolved.
Wow, that's incredible.
And for all those people out there who don't know about blood clots, they put you on blood thinners, but blood thinners actually keep you from preventing new ones from being, it just prevents new blood clots. Okay, blood thinners do not actually heal your blood clots. Yeah. And they have to naturally dissolve. And when I went back and saw the neurologist 2 weeks later, his exact words were, this is absolutely remarkable. He goes, this was your brain on October 12th, and this was your brain on October 31st. And I said, yeah, do you want me to come back next month? And he goes, no, come back in 3 months. We'll take you off the meds, and you'll be healed and 100% healed. And I contribute that huge, remarkable healing to 3 things. 1, having the courage to ask. Right. To asking for love, prayer, support. 2, for the ability to receive that love and prayer and positive energy. And 3rd is my attitude and my perception on everything. I asked my best friends, and I asked my sister, how was I when I was in ICU? And they're like, well, you were good. You're like, yeah, I got 2 blood clots in my brain. You were positive. You not once did you were you scared? Were you negative? Were you afraid? Right. You just knew without having full faith that everything was going to be okay. And that's what shows your true colors. I always say we can always shine on a good day, but how you show up on a bad day shows your true colors. And I truly believe if I had any doubt, if I showed up negatively, if I was scared, the outcome 100% could have been different. Oh yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so powerful. And just to have, it almost seems like that was a lesson for you in receiving in a bigger way. Do you feel without that? Yeah. I remember, it's funny, another similar experience. I was in the ICU after giving birth to my son, Kevin. He's 9 now. And I wasn't that spiritual of a person back then. I didn't, really believe in God. I definitely didn't pray. And I remember when I was in the ambulance, or I had just gotten to the emergency room, and I said to the nurse, and I was like scared saying it, but I'm like, this is the only thing I can do. I was like, will you pray for me? And I was like, I'm like getting chills just saying that. It was like, I'm like, what am I even saying? Like, I don't even pray. Like, I don't like believe in God, but that made this huge shift inside of me that was like opened up possibilities. And it was like it was like the first time that I had ever asked for anything. And she was like, yes, I will, which I think nurses probably do that a lot. And that was a huge shift for me. And then just like having everybody, it was just so interesting that everybody was like praying. I'm like, what is all this prayer? Like,
where is this coming from? And I didn't really get it quite at the time, but just looking back on it, it was a huge shift. And it's just so interesting how you can get into a vulnerable state like that, and how people just step up. It kind of gives you, gives you a little bit of faith in the power that you don't always see.
Oh, yes, exactly. Like, and the courage, right?
Right.
The courage to ask. And so
right.
for all of our viewers that are watching this, it takes a lot of courage to ask.
It does.
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot. And I love that we have this another similar story that we're both in ICU. I don't know if any of you guys have ever been in ICU, but it's a place you do not want to be. Okay. Like every hour on the hour, I'm like, can I go home now? Can I go home now?
Yeah.
Can I go home now? Can I go home now? Right. Like, if you don't want to be in ICU. And so, that is where, so if anyone is listening and they take away something from this message, is it's more powerful to have the courage to ask than to suffer alone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we don't know until we ask. And here's a really cool question that I tell people to ask. So a friend of mine, got diagnosed with breast cancer. And this is my favorite question to ask anyone who's going through anything. I said to her, hey girl, how can I best support you through this transition?
Yeah.
She was so excited that I asked. She's like, oh my gosh, Faith, you know what you can do? Ask me how life is. Ask me
I love that.
How's life? And I said, is that because everyone's asking you how you're feeling? She goes, yes. And when they ask me how I'm feeling, I instantly think I'm supposed to be feeling bad.
Yeah.
And sick and in pain. But can you ask me how life is? So I text her, I would post it on Facebook. Hey girl, how's life? And she's a couple years out of remission.
That's amazing.
And doing beautiful.
I love that you said that, Faith, because I feel like a lot of people don't know what to say when somebody is in pain. And sometimes they don't say anything because it just feels so uncomfortable. And they feel like what they say may be the wrong thing, or, it may not help. But something so simple as just reframing the question and using a question to guide them into a more positive space. That one question can change somebody's life.
100%. 100%. One of my girls who's come to my workshop, she's in my leads group. She's like, Faith, I used your question the other day. Her girlfriend is adopting 2 foster kids.
Oh, nice.
And she and there's all this, legal stuff, lots of stuff to make it a transition. And so she said to her, well, how can I best support you through this transition?
Yeah.
And her friend says, a play date.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, girl, you cook for 5 anyway. What's number 6? Right. And she goes, exactly. She goes, because I had the courage to ask, it's something she would have done naturally, but she would have never even thought that's what she needed. Because she created space for that. And for all those who are listening, when you go to ask this question, people might not respond because no one's ever asked them.
Right.
So the second thing that I say in response is, when you think of it, let me know.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, they'll call me, Faith, remember when you said, yes, of course. Right. And then you get to choose if it's a way you get to support them, how you can show up. Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. I love it. And it's so interesting that how we've navigated ourselves to this particular conversation, this particular topic of small things that make a huge impact, and leading people with questions to create a different outcome. It's so interesting how it all evolves like that. So I'm curious, what's really special about, I know that there's something different that you do with real estate. And I know that, for one, because you were my realtor when we bought our house. But I know there's something more behind than like what other people do. And I feel like what we were just talking about ties into your real estate stuff.
It totally does. And I love that you asked that question, because one thing that sets me apart is I get to implement my gifts.
Right.
And one of my gifts, and truly, when you get to fulfill your purpose, you love what you do.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, the word work isn't even in my vocabulary.
Yeah.
I will say I'm at the office. I'm doing an open house. I'm showing property. That's what I say. I don't say I'm working, because it's not work to me. I get to fulfill my purpose. And it's way more than buying or selling houses. Is powerfully impacting people's lives. And one of the ways I do that is helping people create space for something they might not know is possible. Right? So when it comes to buying a house and you're going, and I meet with my clients always the first time before we show property, and I ask them what are you looking for, what your criteria is, right? And people tend to manifest on materialistic things. We do this naturally. They'll say 2-bedroom, 2-car garage with a mountain view. And I'm like, that's cool, but how do you want to feel? How do you want to feel in that home? Right? I had a client one time, I asked him this a year ago. I said, well, he goes, well, I want it big enough to fit my bed. I'm like, again, that's materialistic.
You're right.
Right? So how do you want to feel in the bed? Right? Like, it's how you feel, because actually how you feel is how we manifest, right? And the reason I ask that question is because, again, we're limiting ourselves. Because what if we're stuck on a 2-bedroom? Because that was our criteria. And this exact scenario happened to me 6 years ago when I manifested my loft. I didn't even know.
I love that story.
Thank you. I didn't even realize I was moving. Someone complained about Boo Boo barking. And I said to my landlord, they're like, you don't understand. If she barks, you're going to have to remove her. I'm like, no, you don't understand. I'm going to remove ourselves, and I'm going to terminate my lease right now. I had no idea I was moving until that very moment. And I had put myself in our criteria where I wanted to live. I knew the exact building that I wanted to live in. And in real estate, we get what is called a floor call. And that's when someone calls online or calls on a sign in a yard and calls our office, and could turn into a possible buyer. This guy calls, says the address, and I think in my head, wait, that's my building. And I'm like, why haven't I seen this property? Long story short, he had an agent. So I was like, call your agent. And this address is in the exact building I wanted to live in. And I'm like, wait a minute, why haven't I seen this? Why haven't I noticed this property on the market? Well, it was a 1-bedroom instead of a 2.
Right.
But it was a 2-bathroom with 1 bedroom. So it feels like a 2-bedroom. And especially if you have guests over, you have this separate powder bath. And the living space is gigantic as a result because of it. And I get off the phone and I call my girlfriend. It's her listing here at the office. Hey girl, would your seller do an owner carry? And she goes, matter of fact, he will. I hung up the phone. I didn't even finish the rest of my floor shift. I literally drive over, show myself the house, and I write up the offer. And that night, the seller wanted more money down. And I'm like, no, this is what I want to put down. This is the interest rate. Like, I wrote a really solid offer, and I was like standing true to what I wanted. And the seller goes,
that's such a good point.
Right? Thank you.
Yeah.
And the seller goes, I'm going to think about it. Well, me and manifesting, and I've been implementing this for a long time. I took my iPhone out and I wrote my new address in my iPhone. I changed my address to my new address, and I started packing. Again, I didn't even know I was moving a few weeks earlier. I started packing. I had like 3 bags of trash, 2 bags of Goodwill, and all this stuff I was packing. About midnight, I'm like, okay, well, I better go to bed. I'm like, because in the morning I'm going to get good news. And sure enough, the seller took my offer. 3 weeks later, I moved into my dream loft in the exact building I wanted. All
Amazing.
Because 2 things. I wasn't attached to the outcome, and it was how I wanted to feel instead of what it had to materialistically be like. And so that's one thing I help my clients realize, is creating that space for something that might not be on your radar, but might be the exact perfect thing for you and your family to manifest.
Yeah. You know what it reminds me of is an iceberg, and how it's like what you know consciously, like what you have in your awareness is like that tip of the iceberg. And there's so much more below the surface that you just could never possibly know, because, there's just so many, the world is so big, the universe is so big, that yeah, we can be so limited sometimes when we just assume that what's possible is what we can see. So just leaving it open, and focusing on the feeling is so powerful.
Is so powerful. And that's one thing I get to do in my real estate business, is help people create that space.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of my other favorite stories is a client who was $30,000 in debt. Mm-hmm. And it was against her culture. She was very, very upset. Matter of fact, she cried for 2 hours during our listing appointment. And we went to list her house, and we actually didn't put it on the market for 6 weeks later, mm-hmm. longer than we originally were going to. And I already had the listing contract signed, and the day before I listed it, I pulled up the comps. Now all real estate agents want to do that. They have a signed contract, they have the mm-hmm. right price, they know it's going to sell. They would have just left it. Right. For various reasons. Myself, I'm always trading space. Mm-hmm. So I go to pull up the comps, and I'm like, oh my God, these houses are selling for more money. I call my client, and I said, hey girl, how would you like to sell your house for $30,000 more? And she goes, well, okay, well, you're the expert, Faith. Yes, let's do it. So we list her house, I kid you not, for $30,000 higher than we would have only 6 weeks earlier. And we get an offer for $2,500 above.
Wow.
And when we go to the closing, she gets to pay off her credit card. And guess how much is on her credit card?
How much?
$32,500.
That's amazing. I knew it was going to be that. That's awesome.
Precisely the extra amount of money we manifested mm-hmm. in 6 weeks. So she got to keep 100% of her proceeds, and in addition to paying off her credit card. And we paid her Amex card at the table. We literally wired Amex the money. It was so magical.
That's so cool.
And she to this day receives on a higher level, because if I didn't have the courage to ask her, hey, would you like to sell your house for more? Yeah. And she wasn't open to it, this would have never happened. But we manifested precisely her debt on her credit card.
Yeah. In Faith, you know what I love so much about everything that you're sharing is you are so passionate and so committed to your personal work, and look at how it's benefiting other people. Like these people are benefiting as a direct result of the work that you're doing on yourself. And so like that self-care is the most selfless thing you could possibly do, because you're putting your focus and your energy and attention on healing yourself, or, up-leveling, elevating yourself. And I know some people, and maybe some people watching, have felt this, that like, oh, that's too selfish. I need to, I'll come later. I need to put these people first. But you're putting your people first by focusing on yourself. So yes, cool.
I love that you point that out. And it's 100% true. It's 100%. When I started focusing on myself, everything in my life fell apart, because everybody was so take. Yeah. And when I said, okay, I have enough, I got to fill me up. And one of my ounces of faith that I created recently that says, if you want to serve others, you got to take care of yourself first.
Yeah.
And us women in particular are taught, I think, culturally to give, right? Mm-hmm. When my sister became a mom, she stopped buying clothes for herself. Yeah. Right? Because her kids were her son was her priority. And I see it in our culture all day long. Mm-hmm. But if you, as a woman and a man, regardless, if you are not fully taking care of you, your cup is half empty.
Right.
So how can you fill up somebody else's?
Right.
You only have half a cup to give, right? And so it is so important, 100%. It's one of the things that truly impacted my life is when I made myself a priority.
Yeah.
So thank you for noticing that. And then I can give more. Like I take more vacations and I make more money.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm taking care of me first so I can 100% be there for my clients.
Yeah. And if anybody watching this feels inspired to reach out to you and, start working with you either through coaching or your book or real estate, one of the many capacities that they have the opportunity to work with you, then they're just going to be so blessed. It's like you get, Faith's magic gets to rub off on you, and that it's going to be the best.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I attract people who are ready, people
Right.
who want more in their life and they didn't even realize they wanted more until the more showed up.
Right.
They're
Right.
Like, oh, that's what she's been talking about. That's what she said when she said create space. That's what she meant, like focus on how I want to feel. Right. One of my favorite questions I ask people, and this is really simple for all our viewers to ask people, is I ask them, how's your heart, body, and soul?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Instead of like, how's it going? Or how are you? Or what's new? Like literally, when you ask that question, we were talking about this a minute ago. When you ask how's your body, heart, and soul, what do you have to do? You got to check in.
Right.
You physically have to check in. Oh, how is my heart feeling? How is my body feeling? Because we're going through the motions, and that's what's important to me, is that people feel important.
Yeah. And how many times do people get asked that? Usually it's like what you said, like, how's it going? Like kind of these generic, kind of meaningless questions, even though there's meaning behind it. It's generic, so it doesn't really bring anything up. But that's
exactly. So like they're going through the motion. Right?
Yes.
So when people ask me, how are you? I say, I'm blessed.
Mm-hmm.
When they actually hear it, it's awesome, because they're like, what? Wait, what did you say? I said, I'm blessed. And they're like, oh, I'm blessed too. I'm like, yes, you are. Because it shifts the energy. Instead of saying I'm fine or I'm okay, right? When you shift even your answer, then people are listening, because people are asking because they're going through the motion, not actually because they care.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So Faith, how can people get a hold of you? How can people reach out to you if they want to, get your book or do some real estate with you, or just say hi?
I love it. So I'm so easy to find, seriously, faithyoung.com. And you can also find me on Facebook, Faith Young, or Faith Young with Coble Binker. And the title of my book, like I said, is What Would Faith Do? And you can get a copy of my book and my journals on Amazon. Awesome. which is so fun. And they like print them and ship them right to you, right off the press. And anyone in your life, or anyone who's listening who could use more faith in their life, I would love to connect. So you can send me a personal message on my Facebook page, so Faith Young or Faith Young Coble Binker. You can find either one super easy. Sarah and I are connected, so you can connect through that way. And I would love to see how I can be a contribution to any of our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. And we'll post those links and everything so people can find you even easier. And if you're not in the Vibrant Life group yet, the Facebook group, then come over and join us in the Vibrant Life group. Faith is in that group as well, so you can ask her any questions. And this video will be posted there too, so she'll be able to answer questions. And then, of course, we do these podcasts almost every day. So, yeah, come join us over there and check out Faith's stuff, and have an amazing rest of your day.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you for including me. Thank you, everyone, for viewing and watching our video.
Thank you, Faith. We'll talk to you later.
You're worth it.
Thank you.